All right, joining me via Zoom. Very excited about this phone call, this guest. He was the former head coach at Georgia Tech, App State, College of Charleston, three-time ACC Coach of the Year, college hoops legend, Bobby Cremins. Coach, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine, Aaron. Thank you for having me on.
How was that introduction? Did that encapsulate 40-plus years in basketball pretty well, or?
Oh, yeah. Yep. You know, I played the game.
Yep.
My first passion was playing.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to be a professional player. That was my number one goal in life.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for me, Aaron, when that door closed, the coaching door opened up. And I fell in love with coaching as much as I did playing.
Didn't you play professionally in like Ecuador or somewhere like that for a year?
Yeah, I tried to play in the old ABA.
Okay.
I tried out for the Pittsburgh Condors and then
Sure.
got traded to the Carolina Cougars.
Okay.
And then I went overseas and I played overseas and I wound up playing in Ecuador, South America, a place called Guayaquil.
Okay.
And I loved it. And I got offers to play in Europe. But I decided I wanted to live in the United States. I wanted to come back to my family. And so it was the NBA or nothing. And again, when that stopped, somehow the coaching door came open, and that opened up a whole new world for me.
What was it like, a kid from New York City, probably early to mid-20s, when you landed in Ecuador? I've never been. I've been to, Central America, never been to Ecuador, though.
Yeah, it was the poverty was incredible. There
Sure.
were, two classes of people, Aaron. It was the upper class and the lower class.
Sure.
But beautiful people, wonderful people, very kind. I remember there was a season of bugs. There was this weird bug that would come for about a month. And I was scared of those bugs, and there was so many of them.
Sure.
There was an earthquake once.
Okay.
I used to go to the beach a lot, the playas. I used to hang out with the Peace Corps people.
Okay.
And that was a lot of fun. That was interesting too. But it was a great experience.
Fantastic. We'll get into your coaching career in a second, but I was just curious, you coached in the ACC for close to 2 decades, right around 2 decades, and you did coach at College of Charleston through 2012, but have been kind of sort of, maybe you don't feel like this, but I feel like you've been relatively off the grid in terms of basketball. What have you been up to the last 5, 6, 7 years since you kind of got out of coaching?
Well, when I didn't coach, I did TV stuff and radio. And Aaron, that was great for me because it kept me close to the game. I would love going to the coaches' practice. I love doing the games and see the strategy. And then the NABC, our National Association of Basketball Coaches, they put me on a committee, an NCAA committee, the Committee for Infractions, which is something I didn't know about. I didn't know what I was getting into. Now, I cannot be on any case that I have any affiliation or if I know anybody, which is good. But that's been good too, keeping me close to the game. And I try and stay close to the game, even though I'm not in the trenches anymore. I have a lot of former assistants who are still coaching. And I just love the game. I'm very good friends with a lot of coaches. I was with Nike my whole career. And we have a Nike trip every year. This year we didn't obviously have one. And I've always tried to remain friends with coaches. I love coaches. I love watching them try and build programs. I love watching them go through adversity. It was really interesting watching Tony Bennett at Virginia, losing in a historic loss to a 16th seed, and then coming back and getting redemption by winning a national championship. That was really something to watch. So I'm still heavily involved in the game in any way I can be.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, Tony Bennett was one that probably struck me. I mean, what teams or programs do you kind of enjoy watching either from a distance or maybe that you have an affiliation with in kind of modern college hoops? Because it's kind of a crazy sport where, you know, some guys are young every year, some guys are old every year, some guys take transfers. It's just kind of a wild sport to follow because there's so many schools that do it in so many different ways.
That's right. There's sometimes I feel like I should be coaching because so many of my peers
Sure.
are close to my age, particularly, of course, Coach K, Coach Boeheim, Coach Leonard Hamilton, Cliff Ellis, former Clemson coach, is still coaching out there. There's a lot of coaches who are still coaching. And sometimes I think, maybe I left too soon. So that's a big trend today. There is no age gap. In the old days, we all thought we'd go to about 60, no longer than 62, 63. And then the other thing that I love watching is the young coaches. I like to see the young coaches like a Tony Bennett come on the scene and make progress, make headway, and build the program.
Very good. You know, you mentioned building a program. I believe Coach K, I was just reading this morning, said that he believes that you're the greatest program builder in the history of the ACC. So I just want to set up the tone here for people who are a little young, might not remember. You get to Georgia Tech, 1980-81. I read that I'm a little young, so I apologize, but 9 losing seasons in the 10 years before you get there. The ACC is loaded. Dean Smith is there. Coach K, I believe, got there right around the same time as you, maybe a year before, maybe the same year. But Georgia Tech was completely off the grid. And within 4 years, you win an ACC title. But we'll get to the ACC title in a moment. What do you do when you get to this league of just incredible coaches, incredible talent? Maryland was really good at the time. NC State was good at the time. What is the first step towards building that program? Because Coach K himself said you're the greatest program builder in the history of the conference.
Yeah, I appreciate Mike saying that. Well, let me just say, as a player, Aaron, I played in the ACC. And I lost a very difficult game, an ACC championship game. And I did not handle that loss very well. It really stuck with me. And I was immature. And then once I got into coaching, I felt like I would love to someday coach in the league where I played and get some redemption and maybe win an ACC championship as a coach that I lost as a player. And so being able to go into the ACC gave me that opportunity. I wasn't sure what I was getting into, and that probably was very good. People told me, you don't want to go there. You're not going to win. You're not going to beat those other schools. I didn't care about that. I could care less. I just wanted an opportunity. And it turned out to be Atlanta is a great city. Georgia Tech is a great academic institution. And it was just a perfect fit. I was at the right place at the right time. And of course, my major motivation was ACC basketball. I was nervous. As you alluded to, Coach K and Jimmy V arrived 1 year before me, and the three of us were known as the Young Guns.
Okay.
And of course, the guy we had to go against was Dean Smith. The first thing, Aaron, you have to do is your staff. You've got to hire a great staff. And that was number one. And then secondly, you got to recruit. We had to go through a year where we, could not recruit because we came in late. And we just had to, the first year, we had to coach our brains off, shorten the clock, play a slow down game, try and stay in games and not get embarrassed. And while all that was going on, we were recruiting every hour that we possibly could. One of my former assistants, George Felton, who's now a scout for the Spurs, he was at an AAU tournament in Jacksonville, and he called me. He said, "I think I found the kid." And I said, "Well, you're in Jacksonville. That's not too far from Atlanta." He said, No, the tournament's here. But the kid's from Enid, Oklahoma.
Okay.
and he discovered Mark Price, and we went
Yeah.
out to Oklahoma. Aaron, we saw him play every one of his games. Every one.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And then I went up to New York, my stomping grounds, and we saw a skinny kid by the name of John Sally, who lives in your area.
Yep.
And John visited Atlanta, fell in love with Atlanta. The mayor was Andrew Young. Andrew Young spoke to John, and John came with us. He then grew about 4 inches, and he's one of the brightest young men that I've ever coached. And so, again, it was a combination of building the program by, you got to believe in yourself. You can't doubt yourself. You got to have a great staff. And then you got to go roll up the sleeves and go find some young men who can fit the mold that you want and achieve the challenge that you're about to take on.
So, dumb question, what was recruiting like back in the early to mid 80s? Because now coaches can pull up, endless film. You can find any piece of information you need on a kid. But what was it like back in 80, 81, 82, where I don't even know. I'll throw it back to you. What was recruiting like? How did you find players? Was it more relationship based in terms of the people that you knew in high schools, colleges, whatever? How was recruiting back then?
Yeah, it's a great question, Aaron. First of all, there were no dead periods, there was no play times throughout the year where you could take a break. It was
Wow.
It was 24/7. It was 12 months a year, and we'd go all over the country. But basically, I'm from New York, and so basically, Aaron, it would all start with recruiting services.
Okay.
And one of the big recruiting services was a thing called 5-Star.
Cool.
So 5-Star, it was run by Howie Garfinkel in New York and Tommy Kuchowski. And they would send out a report. Now, what they'd have camps in order to see these kids play. And we'd all go up to Garfinkel's camp. That was held first in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, and then in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Sonny Vaccaro, another person lives in your area.
Yep.
He would have the Nike camp. And the Nike camp would bring the top 100 players in high school, upcoming seniors. And Sonny would bring them all to Princeton, New Jersey for 1 week. And then other shoe companies started camps. And Sonny eventually moved over to Adidas. And so now we had an Adidas camp run by Sonny Vaccaro. We had a Nike camp. We had 5-Star camp. And it was imperative that you would go to these camps and watch these young men play. And that was really, really big that we did that. Once we did that, we could then target who we were going to recruit. And then once the, September would roll around, then we would charge into their homes and high schools and try and get them to commit.
Second really dumb question. I've seen old videos of that 5-Star camp. There's videos of John Calipari when he's 21, 22, working kids out. What happened when it rained? Because I grew up in Connecticut, and it rains all the time in the summer, and they're doing these camps at these outdoor courts. Did they just call the camp, did they make it 2 weeks and hope nothing rained, or what?
No, they always had one gym.
Okay.
Like, for instance, in Pittsburgh, it'd be Robert Morris campus.
Okay.
And you're absolutely right. Nobody played in the indoor court sometimes, but it was all outdoor courts, which we loved, especially in the evening. When we come back after dinner, the games would start about 7 o'clock and end around 10, 11 o'clock at night. But once the rain came, what Howie Garfinkel did, he would everybody would go to the main gym.
Okay.
And then sometimes, Bobby Knight could be there, Mike Fratello, and Howie would get one of the great coaches there, Hubie Brown, to do a clinic, to talk to the people. And sometimes he would have the counselors he would have these great college players who were counselors because they had great counselor games. And he would tell the counselors, okay, let's do a counselor game. And the campers loved that. And so did we. That was fun to watch. So you'd always come up, you had to be creative. But we would all report to the gym, and some good things would happen in that gym.
Very interesting. Another kind of question in that vein, if so much of the evaluation is happening at a camp where all the coaches are, I mean, now, well, I guess it's kind of the same now, because I was going to say I would feel like, a Mark Price or somebody like that, you wouldn't want the other coaches to see until he signs a letter of intent, of course. I don't know. I think that's interesting that I feel like there was probably less information available back then. And I feel like you'd almost not want your guy to show up to a camp like that because you don't want everybody else to find out about him. But maybe I'm wrong on that.
No, you're not. No, you're absolutely right. And sometimes we would hate that. We would hate to have a kid that we thought, not the other people didn't know about. And all of a sudden, Howie Garfinkel, Sonny Vaccaro, Sonny didn't miss a beat. They would invite them to the camp. And I can remember easily, going to the camp and saying, uh-oh, because the kid would play fantastic. And all of a sudden, he was no longer what I call a sleeper.
Sure.
And everybody would start recruiting him. But there were always sleepers, Aaron. There was always kids that were not invited to these superstar camps. And you loved it when you found a kid that didn't go to the camp. I coached a kid by the name of Matt Harpring.
Sure.
And Matt Harpring played baseball, basketball, and football.
Okay.
And he never went to the camps. I don't know if Stephon Curry ever went to the camps, because Stephon Curry did not have one power school offer him a scholarship. So Aaron, there's always interesting stories. There's always somebody that slips between the cracks, and you better keep an eye out for those kids also.
Yeah, I mean, our rookie of the year this year in the NBA, John Morant, went to Murray State. Obi Toppin, I actually interviewed him for this same show, and he had kind of a crazy story too. Growth spurt, academic problems, and then all of a sudden you look up and he's 21, 22, and he's a monster. So, all right, so Georgia Tech, you mentioned Mark Price and John Sally, and they were kind of the backbone. People don't know, by the way, Mark Price, multiple-time NBA All-Star. John Sally played like 10, 12 years in the league, multiple NBA championships. So right away you evaluate and find two guys that are NBA players, frankly, and really good NBA players. I think if my memory and my notes serve me correct, the first 2 years are a little bit of a struggle. Third year, you get things rolling. Then fourth year, like I said, ACC regular season tournament championship. Did you catch people off guard that year? I mean, how surprising was it when you looked up and you were the ACC champs in '85?
Yeah, Mark Price was he was about 5'11", 6 feet, and people thought he was too small, and that really helped us. By the time near the end of his senior year, people started to come see him play. But we had been there from day one, watched every single game, and people started to think maybe this kid is good enough. There was a kid in Oklahoma by the name of Steve. I'll tell you in a second. But Steve was a very good player, and he wanted to go to North Carolina. So did Mark Price. And so North Carolina signed Steve, and that helped us get Mark Price. John Sally, everybody just thought he was too skinny, Aaron. And we really hit it off because, I was from New York, even though I'm from the Bronx and he's from Brooklyn. So it was interesting getting those two kids and then watching them develop.
Very good. Throughout that, one of the reasons I want to have you on, so I had Josh Pastner on probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and he's about my age, maybe a year or two older. But, he remembers kind of the Georgia Tech, the excitement around the program that I do from when I was young, What was it like when you really had things rolling? Because if memory serves me correct, the Braves weren't very good for a good chunk of the time that you were there through the 80s, 1990, they turn around. Falcons, Hawks, etc. So what Josh was telling me was that you guys were really the hottest ticket in town. I mean, when you get that thing rolling, couple ACC championships, deep tournament runs, what was Atlanta like during those years?
It was fantastic. The people really started to come. Atlanta's a great city, and they love a winner.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, ACC basketball. That was I should have mentioned that too, building a program. We sold ACC basketball. We told the players that they could play in a conference where the best players in the country played. And so, we started then to get McDonald's All-American. Bruce Darrapple was our first McDonald's All-American. Dwayne Farrell came, Tommy Hammonds. And it really got fun. And we were on a roll. And then, of course, Kenny Anderson, Travis Best, James Forrest. It was a lot of fun, Aaron. And, we wanted to win it all. We wanted to, try and get that national championship. And that's every coach's dream. Sure. And we came up a little short there.
Yeah, no, I just, I looked it up. I think it was 9 straight NCAA tournaments in the 80s into the 90s. And it was at a time, you kind of referenced it off the top, where the ACC was so good. I mean, you mentioned Dean Smith, Coach K, Jim Valvano, Maryland, all that stuff. So, no, I mean, it was unbelievable. And, I was a fan growing up watching all of it from a distance. But that was what Josh said, was just the excitement in the city, the toughest ticket in town, all that stuff. You mentioned Kenny Anderson. I mean, how does that one come about? For people who don't know, and I'll be honest, I didn't even realize quite how decorated that he was as a high school player, but basically was like everyone's like national player of the year, #1 high school player in America. I believe some people had him ranked ahead of Shaquille O'Neal in his high school recruiting class. He's from New York. I know you're from New York, but I mean, how did you get Kenny Anderson down to Georgia Tech?
Well, his high school coach and I both went to the same high school, All Hallows High School in the Bronx. He's a famous coach. His name is Jack Curran. And Coach Curran had a camp at Fordham University every summer. And I would go and speak. And one day he told me, he said, "See that little kid over there? He's going to start for me as a freshman."
Wow.
And I knew Coach Curran never started freshmen. And so I said, "Coach, could I meet him?" And I shook his hand. And I started recruiting him. I recruited him for 4 years. From that very moment, I recruited him. And he was a superstar. He was a natural point guard. He could score, but he was an incredible ball handler, an incredible passer. And it came down to North Carolina, Syracuse, and Georgia Tech. And we got him. And one of the reasons we got him was Mark Price. He loved the success that Mark Price had, and it worked out great. It really did.
So, you said back then there were no recruiting rules. So for Mark Price, for Kenny Anderson, how often are you hopping on a flight from Atlanta to New York to make sure that you're not missing something when Jim Boeheim or whoever is going to be able to get to the same event?
Well, since you're in LA, I'll tell you a funny story.
Okay, let's go.
I got a phone call about Don McLean.
Okay.
And so, California, I didn't recruit California a lot. We actually got a young man out of there. He transferred. But I just felt like California was in Europe.
Sure.
But they convinced me that this young man really was serious about Georgia Tech.
Wow.
So I flew out there and met with Don and his family, his high school coach. Simi Valley, I think it was Simi Valley High School.
Sounds about right, yeah.
And actually, so one day in practice, we practiced a little bit earlier. I told my manager, you be ready, get the car ready. And I slipped out of practice a little early to catch like a 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock flight out of Atlanta. And it arrived in LA at 7. I jumped in the rent-a-car. I got over there just as the game would start. at Simi Valley. And then when it was over, I would rush back to the airport, catch a red eye back to Atlanta. And I did that a few times. And the same goes for New York. Homer Rice, who hired me, my athletic director, he said that I was the only guy that could break an unlimited budget. But we went all the time.
Yeah.
We went all the time because, again, there were no dead periods. There were no quiet periods. And, we just felt like, that we had to show these young men how badly we wanted them.
Yeah.
And we just would go all the time. Now, I don't mind telling you, it hurt me as a husband and as a father.
Sure.
And I regret that, but I made up for that. Because, I tell these young coaches today, you've got to keep your priorities in order. And I'm glad, I'm so happy that they have dead periods and quiet periods where you cannot recruit. And I tell every coach today, Sunday, unless it's during the season and you got to practice for an hour or two, but make Sunday a day where you do nothing basketball-wise, and you just concentrate every moment to be with your wife and your family.
I've had so many guys this off season, and it's tragic events. I'm not saying that we wanted it to happen, but because of this pandemic, I've had so many guys tell me, it's been a blessing in disguise. I get to spend more time with my family. I realize that I don't have to be doing this, that, and the other thing, 24 hours a day. I'm learning how to work smarter, recruit smarter, all that stuff. So you're not the first person that's told me that, even in the last, 4 or 5 months. But yeah, I was curious because, with the no dead period thing, I mean, I remember reading Brian Dutcher, who's the head coach at San Diego State now. He was the lead recruiter at Michigan during the Fab Five. And he told me, like, he saw Juwan Howard play like 30 days in a row or something like that, because back then you could go to and they were only a state away. I mean, it was probably a short drive. It probably wasn't that big of a deal. But back then he said they would play in the summer every day at the park. He's like, I would just go to the park and watch Juwan Howard play every single day for 34, 35 days in a row. So that's what made me think of it. And then also, like you said, now all these coaches get private planes. They get in, they get out. I'm guessing back then there was no charter flights. You were going to the airport, going through security, all that stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. I finally found a great parking place at the Atlanta airport. And I had everything timed down, and the Delta people were great. They were great. And but you're right. You had to go through security, and it was a different world. But it was a fun world. It was fun going to watch these kids play.
Yeah, with Kenny Anderson, I did. Oh, one other thing I wanted to ask you. I was reading something about Kenny Anderson today, and they said, and by the way, for people who don't know, Kenny Anderson was a phenomenal high school, college player into the NBA. I don't know if he had the NBA career that some people thought, but I mean, he was one of the best college point guards maybe ever in the 2 years that he was with you. I saw that he said one of the reasons he committed was because you let young guys play right away. And I saw this, I think it was 4 years in a row you had the ACC Freshman of the Year and like 6 out of 8 or something. I feel like maybe you were a little bit ahead of your time now, because guys now, they understand if I get a good player, I might only have him for a year or two, but I'm not going to put him behind a senior. I'm going to let the best guy play. I mean, was that always your philosophy? Just let whoever's the best player, give him the opportunity, senior or freshman?
Well, Aaron, I did not recruit a lot of players.
Okay.
And usually when I recruited the Kenny Anderson, so forth, the great opportunity would be there for them. It was not like they were going to come in and move somebody out.
Okay.
I coached Kenny for 2 years, Stephon Marbury for 1. But one of the reasons Stephon came with us was that we had an opening. Travis Best was a senior.
Okay.
When Travis Best came, we had an opening. So if I didn't have the opening, I would not recruit the position. I felt I was always a better recruiter if I had the right opportunity for the young man I was recruiting. And when I would go to these camps, I would know exactly what we needed. And once I saw that a young man would fit in perfectly exactly what we needed, that's the guy that I wanted to go recruit, because I felt like I had the perfect opportunity for him.
Very interesting. In 90 with Kenny Anderson, you guys go to the Final Four. One, I would love to hear kind of the experience. And like you said, obviously every coach wants to win a national championship, but from where you started to get to a Final Four is incredible. But then the other thing was, you know, the UNLV teams from that era have kind of become historic. And the year they won the national championship, they beat Duke by 30 in the championship game, and everyone remembers that great game. You guys played them in the Final Four the game before and played them really tough. So the experience of going to the Final Four, but then also that UNLV team, which everybody remembers is so historically great, you guys had them on the ropes again. I don't mean to bring up a bad memory, but, you know, that's a little lost in the shuffle here all these years later.
Yeah, we had him on the ropes. Jerry Tarkanian was scared of Kenny Anderson, and he came out in the zone.
Okay.
And we had Dennis Scott and Brian Oliver, but Dennis Scott, you know, he could shoot from anywhere. And so we were up 7 at halftime, Aaron. And I told the team, I said, now they're coming out of the zone. They're going to come after us. And sure enough, they did. They rattled us. And Kenny Anderson picked up his 4th foul. And Kenny's still mad at me today, Aaron, for taking him out.
Oh.
But I had to take him out. And they took it. We lost their momentum.
Sure.
And but we did have him on the ropes, and I regret that, you know, that Kenny got that 4th foul, and maybe I should have kept him in there. But Kenny, you know, he's been through a lot. He's had some personal problems, but he's the head coach at Fisk University today, and he's got a beautiful wife and family, and he's doing well. But if you bring up the UNLV game, that's the first thing he said. You should have left me in the game. You should have left me in the game.
How I know it's a painful memory because you didn't win, but take us through, because that is the pinnacle for a college coach, and by that point you had been in it 20 plus years. I mean, we've all, for people who haven't been to the Final Four, but a lot of people listening have or know about it. There's coaches that listen to this. The dream is always kind of walk through that tunnel on Friday. For people who don't know, there's an open practice where the public can come, enjoy, and all that stuff. I mean, as a coach, how cool was it where you started with Georgia Tech to have that weekend where you're part of the conversation, you're walking through that door? It's funny, I remember last year at the Final Four, Chris Beard, the Texas Tech coach, said, you know, they keep telling me it's my first Final Four. He said, I come every year. He's like, I'm just usually, you know, he said, I started sleeping on the floor with my buddies 30 years ago, but I've been here every year. This is just the first time that I'm playing. How cool was it to get to walk out of that tunnel on Friday and Saturday in the lead up to those games?
Oh, it was fantastic. My father passed away at Christmas time, but my college coach, he came out and we walked out together on what do you call? I think it was Friday for practice, and that was cool having Coach McGuire with me. You know, it wasn't as crazy then as it is now. We did not play in the Dome. I think we were one of the last games. We played in Denver.
Yeah.
And we were one of the last Final Fours to play, you know, in a regular arena.
That's right.
But Aaron, you can't beat it. It's a fantastic feeling. You know, you get wrapped up. It's a lot of distractions, but you know the feeling to get there, and you got to be lucky, Aaron. I was lucky to get there. In the second round, we had to beat Shaquille O'Neal and LSU, and we were down 19. And then Tom Izzo was a young assistant sitting with Judd Heathcote on Michigan State.
Okay.
And you know, we were down 2, and they missed a 1-on-1. And Kenny Anderson came running down. And I kept on saying, shoot it, shoot it. He finally shot it, and it went in. And everybody went crazy. But the officials, I looked at the officials, and I knew it was going to be a close call. And they came over to me, and they said, Bobby, we got a problem. We don't think it was a 3-point shot. We think his foot was on the line. And I said, fine, no problem. Let's go into overtime. But, God bless Judd Heacoat. Every time he saw me after that, he'd give me a hard time. And Tom Izzo always talked about that game. And then Minnesota, they had a shot to beat us at the buzzer. And Clem Haskins was the head coach. So you got to be lucky. Yeah. And there's a lot of great coaches, Aaron, who have never been to the Final Four. And it's unfortunate that, that's the way we're graded on national championships, Final Four, because that's the way it is. So when you get there, it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. Take us through, because I don't think people, the casual person, realizes how lucky you have to be. I hear all the time, how does John Calipari only have one national championship? How does Sean Miller never get to the Final Four when he always has a good team? And it's like, every coach, even the legends, I talked to Jim Calhoun probably 3-4 months ago, and he talks about the 2-3 years that he didn't get there when he thought he had a team that was good enough to do it, not necessarily the teams that won. The teams that stick out to him are the ones that were good enough to do it that weren't able to. And I think that the casual fan doesn't realize to win 6 single elimination games, twisted ankle, Kenny Anderson's foul. It's crazy what goes into having success in that tournament.
It really is. And, I felt like we should have been there 2 or 3 times. And had we done that, I think we would have won a national championship at least once. But, of course, John Wooden has the most, 10 national championship. And Coach K, Coach Wooden, Coach K, they kind of spoiled it. They kind of made it look easy.
Yeah.
Winning so many championships. Usually the number would be 2 or 3 the most, not 10, not 5. So that people don't realize, how everything's got to fall in order to get there.
Very good. You mentioned Stephon Marbury a few minutes ago. He's a guy I think most basketball fans know. They remember he was with you for 1 year. I assume it was the New York City connections, but how was he another one that ended up from New York City to Atlanta?
Well, he idolized Kenny Anderson. Yeah, I did not do a great job recruiting Stephon. But we had a really good opportunity for him. He narrowed it down, I think, basically to Syracuse, UNLV might have been in there, and Georgia Tech. And his high school coach, Bobby Hartstein, called me one day and he said, if you want this kid, you're still in the league and you better get going. So I flew up to Brooklyn and went over to his Coney Island, where the famous roller coaster is. And it was unique. His family, there's a documentary out right now about Stephon Marbury. I encourage people to look at it. Of course, he made the big move of going to China, and that turned out to be a great move for him. But it's a good documentary, Aaron. And I only coached him for about 6 months, but he was a good kid. He went to class every day, and he could really, really score the basketball.
Yeah. Have you taught? I guess I haven't seen the documentary yet, but it is kind of surreal, like how his career has played out. How many of your guys are you still in touch with? Do you still talk to your guys all the time?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I talk to them. I always hope that, if they have any problems, that they feel free to call me. Last year, Dennis Scott, Brian Oliver, myself, we all went to Kenny Anderson. He had a big thing in Nashville for the opening of his season. Every year, I try to go back to the Georgia Tech reunion, where everybody comes back. So, yeah, I love talking to my former players, and I love when they call.
Very good. Are you following Coach Passner's team? One of the reasons I wanted to talk to him a few weeks ago, I think they have a chance to be really good this year. They finished 5th in the ACC, bring back essentially everybody. They do lose maybe their best big guy, but it seems like he's kind of got things going in the right direction for them as well going into 2021.
Yeah, I did not know Josh personally, but he worked for Lute Olson, and I was Lute's assistant in the World Games. And Lute called me and told me great things about Josh and asked me to keep an eye out for him. He had an incredible first year, Aaron. You know, usually your first year, you're not supposed to win that many games. And you got to give credit to Brian Gregory. Brian Gregory left him. Josh Okogie turned out to be ACC Rookie of the Year. And Ben Lammers, nobody knew how good Lammers was. So Josh really capitalized on that and had an incredible year. And then, he went through some tough times, particularly, when he got to know that family. And that really, really bothered him. I think it took a lot away from his coaching. And, I feel like now it's all behind him. I totally agree with you. He had a great year last year when there was a lot of pressure on him. He finished 5th in the ACC. He has 4 starters back. He has a great backcourt coming back, maybe the best in the ACC, another New York kid. And, of course, the other one's from Florida. And everybody at Georgia Tech is excited. They're excited about the upcoming season. Of course, we got to first deal with the virus.
Sure.
But I think this is I think this could be Josh's year, and he can make a lot of noise. I thought he made a lot of noise last year, and he's got a lot of momentum coming into this year.
Very good. Anything? Oh, you are writing a book. We're going to have you back on to talk in a little bit. How's the book writing process coming?
Well, it's great. English is not my it's I just write. I write, okay. and I make a lot of literary mistakes in terms of new paragraphs and things like that. And so, but people can correct that. I feel like it's important that I just write what happened. And right now I'm a senior at South Carolina. I'm about to have my first life crisis.
Okay.
When we lose that game I talked about. And then I'll take it to a publisher and I'll see where he wants to go with it. But what's important to me is that what I write is accurate. That's very, very important to me. And then hopefully, I would love for it to be a book where a young man could open it up, a player, and see what I went through as a player. And then as a coach, I would hope a young coach, I have not got into the coaching aspect of it yet, but I hope a coach could open the book up and just read, and he will learn a lot. I love to read biographies. Mm-hmm. When I got into coaching, I read every book by Bobby Knight, by Hubie Brown, by John Wooden, by Dean Smith. Some of them were a little boring because of the biography part, but you could learn so much, so much. Of course, when I was coaching, I loved, the X and O books about what offense. Bobby Knight would write a book called Motion Offense. He would write a book called, something about defense, and I love those books. I would read those books 2 or 3 times, and then I would try to apply some of the principles with my team. So I encourage reading. I think you can learn so much from it.
Who's got a great biography not related to sports that you really enjoy reading time and time again?
Oh, boy.
Or it could be sports, but not like the obvious basketball ones.
Well, I love reading about John F. Kennedy.
Okay.
I loved reading about, of course, Churchill's biographies are always great. But, you could pick them. You could pick them. There's so many out there. And they're expensive, some of them. But you could go to Amazon and get a used one. And they're absolutely incredible when you read about some of these people's lives. It's really, I think it's a wonderful thing to do.
Very good. I don't really have anything else for you. Is there anything else from your career, anything that we haven't hit on, or that fans that are Georgia Tech? No? I thought we did a good job.
If you run into John Sally or Sonny Vaccaro, please tell them I said hello. Those 2 people were very important people in my life. Sonny gave me my first contract at Nike. And John Sally, again, he's one of the brightest young men. He graduated in 4 years at Georgia Tech. and then he went out to LA, and I don't see much of him. But I'm very proud of him, and I hope he's doing well. And I hope Sonny's had some health issues, so I hope both those guys are doing well.
Yeah, I talked to Sonny about a year ago when RJ Hampton went overseas, and there was a few things going on, and he was really great with his time, and he is a basketball savant as far as memories, and I saw this kid at this gym and all that kind of stuff. So it was a really fun interview, and he was great. He was gracious with his time, so I enjoyed talking to him, but haven't probably spoken to him since. So.
Okay, Aaron. Well, I enjoyed this.